Emily, it is such an honor to reconnect with you. It has been just over 13 years since you went through podcasting A to Z. And just before we went live, you said that your podcasting journey has been in, I think, quote unquote, quite the journey and in a positive way. So, welcome, first of all. How are you?
I'm doing great. You were more clean shaven back in the day.
Yes. It's a new thing. I just grew out a beard probably about I guess it was back in June of last year. Stephanie said, "Why don't you let it grow out a little bit and see what happens?" And well, we see what
That's
happens.
what happens.
We found
I
out.
like it.
Thank you. Emily, let me ask you, when did you first discover podcasts? Not as a content creator, but just listening to other people's podcasts. When did you first hear about them, and maybe what was one of the first one or two shows you ever listened to?
Oh gosh. Well, I was not an early adopter of podcasts. I think my first big podcast was Serial. Do you remember
I
the true
loved
crime?
I loved that first season of Serial. I was riveted every
Me
single minute
too.
of every episode.
Me too. And I was like, people can do this? Like, you can create your own content that's this good and give it directly to an audience with no gatekeepers. That was the first time I was like, huh, how can we use this technology? And then podcasts just kind of exploded. But I do feel like in the 2010s, early 2010s, that was not, it was like right before it just got crazy. You and I worked on mixers. You probably still work on mixers, but you don't need a mixer now. But back in the day, you did. That's how long we've been podcasting.
Yeah. I gave away the mixers probably about 4 or 5 years ago. They had been gathering dust, and some of them were sitting on shelves, and so we had a yard sale, and I put probably what was originally about $8,000 worth of audio equipment on a table, and I sold it to somebody for like $500. I said, "Listen, most of this stuff is still inside of a box. I have no doubt in my mind you will be able to 10x, 20x your investment as long as one thing, for $500 you have to haul away everything this on this table. You can't leave anything behind."
So you got rid of Cliff got rid of his mixers.
Well, here's the thing. I have a what I paid $700 for in what's called the Rodecaster Pro 2. So this
Uh-huh.
is it's like a mixer, but it's an all-in-one podcast studio. It has the sliders, it's got the little pads for audio jingles, and it does the recording inside of it. It's a headphone amp. I mean, it's everything all in one. But I replaced it. It's literally sitting on my desk gathering dust, unpowered, because for the last several weeks, I've been using the PodTrack P4 Next little tiny device. This thing fits in the palm of my hand and can plug in four podcast microphones, four independent pair of headphones, independently controlled volume for each pair of headphones, independent level controls for each microphone. It has four sound pads for jingles like this, and it has an SD card, so it records everything internally, and it will do a mixer mix minus, so that you can actually do live calls over the
I'm
internet.
gonna have to take your class again because I've never seen that. But I'm just cracking up because back in the day when you were like, okay, you're gonna need an Audio Technica microphone, you're gonna need this mixer, and I was like, this dude is what? But there I was mixing away on this podcast. Thank God we don't have those anymore.
Well, let's talk about that. What made you decide to launch your own? I mean, you talked about the fact that it's through Serial that you were brought into the podcasting awareness. So, what made you decide to launch your own?
Well, early 2010s to early, late 2000s, I was thinking I wanted to do the solopreneur thing, the author, speaker, writer thing. And so podcasting was the way to get out and reach an audience directly. And I got to tell you, I'll just cut to the chase here. all these years later, over a decade later, and podcasting is still my number one marketing tool. When people come into, because I'm still doing a community all these years later, and when people come in, we say, "How did you hear about us?" And number one, it's the podcast.
That does not surprise me, and I'm thrilled that it is still working for you today as a primary source of new people coming into your world. The podcast that you have today is related to A Course in Miracles. Is that correct?
Yes, the podcast is called Exploring A Course in Miracles. That's not what I started back in the day with you. I wanted to do a podcast called about a Course in Miracles. It was called Devout, but it wasn't so good then. It got better over the years.
As all podcasts do, they get better over the years. So tell me about your first podcast that you did launch.
So it was I didn't even release it, Cliff.
Okay,
Um,
tell me more.
I so you know how it goes. We did the class and you were like, okay, at the end of the class, you should have a podcast, right? Like at least a sample episode that we can make live. And I did. And I had the jingles in there. I had an intro, I had an outro, I had art, I had it all set up. And I listened to it a couple of weeks after I recorded it. And I was like, this is not good. I, I mean, it sounded good, but the content wasn't great. And so I shelved the idea of a podcast for a while, and then I started working at the nonprofit that I work at now called Circle of Atonement. And the founder and I just had such a natural rapport. We ended up getting married. Actually, we had such a
That's
natural rapport.
that's some
We ended up
rapport.
getting married. Yeah, but because of our we just were in these conversations, I was like, we need to do a podcast. Have you ever had a podcast in this organization? And he was like, no, never even thought of it. And so we started our podcast in 2018, and it's been going pretty much weekly ever since. We had a bit of a hiatus for a while there, but yeah, pretty much we were every week and now we're every other week because you know what goes into doing a quality podcast. It takes a lot. But at the same time, as I mentioned before, it's our number one recruiting tool, marketing tool. And I have noticed something interesting though that I wanted to ask you about.
Okay.
When we first started the podcast in 18, Libsyn was where we were getting most of our distribution, right? So you put your podcast on Libsyn and it gets it out to Amazon and iTunes and all of that. And we saw our growth in those areas. And now we put the podcast on YouTube, and it's almost like before the listenership came from all of these Libsyn outlets, and YouTube was secondary, and that has totally reversed. Now people are listening to more podcasts on YouTube, so we added a video component to it, and less on Libsyn, which is just that reverse has been interesting for us to observe over the years.
So you said that you have a question for me related to that. What would be the
Yeah,
question?
have you seen that in other podcasts?
I have heard about this phenomenon. It is not something that happens for everyone, but you're definitely not alone in experiencing this. Is something for me that immediately jumps to my mind, and that is the fact that you have picked such a narrowly niched focus for your show, doing a podcast devoted to a single spiritual text, if you will. Not just Christian faith, not just like new age spirituality, not just you're not broad by any stretch of the imagination. There's one book, one text, one course, A Course in Miracles. And what I happen
Hmm.
to know about it is that there are millions of people around the world constantly searching for that. And the second largest search engine in the world is YouTube. So that is probably, in my opinion, why you happen to have a podcast, even at the time if it was audio only. But if you were putting your audio only podcasts into YouTube and with the title, A Podcast on A Course of Miracles, people are searching for A Course in Miracles and your content shows up. And even if it's not video at the time, people are so devoted to that material that they would listen to audio files with a static image of your artwork on YouTube to consume that material, especially given the fact that your audio production quality had to have been top notch, because I happen to know what course you went to learn how to do that.
It was better in the beginning, but I sounded real crisp in the beginning with all of that equipment that you got. Now we just do it on Zoom. We're not as techie as we were before. It's funny, we sounded better before the pandemic
Well,
than after.
it's interesting because with video, you definitely are appealing to a different audience. When you say that you added a video component once you started to see this phenomenon, did you say that you went over to Zoom? So just the two of you jump on a Zoom call and have Zoom record the video, and that's what you use to upload to your YouTube channel? Is that how that's working?
That's exactly it. So after your course, I was thinking I needed to really invest in making this podcast sound amazing. And so that's what I did. And then once we decided, oh, people want to watch this as well, we couldn't figure out how to make it sound good and capture the video at the same time. I know a lot of people have figured this out. This is probably why I need to take your course again, because I have still to this day haven't figured out how to get good audio quality and video. But we just decided that for ease and simplicity's sake, we would record on Zoom and use the audio and release that as the podcast. And then we cover video and Libsyn. And I learned from you how to use Camtasia. And Camtasia is video editing software. And so that's what I do. Rather than going into Audacity, for example, and editing the audio, I just go into Camtasia and edit the video and then download the audio and use that as my podcast.
And that is more than sufficient. There are a couple of questions I have for you. You say that your audio used to focus on creating the most brilliant production audio-wise before, and you seem to indicate that maybe somehow you've lowered the standard that's required for the content since then. But what are you doing when it comes to your microphones? What are you using when you're on those Zoom calls? Did you just go to internal laptops microphones?
This is embarrassing. Earbuds.
Okay. Is that what you're using
Yeah.
now?
Yes. Well, I've got this. I'm at my husband's computer now. He's got like he actually has an Audio Technica. I'm
Okay.
just saying, this is from back in the day. And this has been the best mic, but he uses the good mic and I use earbuds.
Well, here's what I will say. So you and I are creating this originally via Zoom. So you're on Zoom right now, dialed into Zoom, and I'm dialed into Zoom, and you and I happen to be using a separate third-party program called Ecamm Live. And so Ecamm Live has the ability, this Ecamm software will log into the Zoom call for me on my behalf, but it's logging me into Zoom. That's how I'm bringing you in. And Ecamm Live has the ability to bring your audio and video and put it into my Ecamm Live software, which allows me to stream it out live to all of the different platforms. And so there are people on LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitter, or X platform, I guess, and Facebook. So there are people out there watching us live right now. I do happen to be sending my audio to you through Zoom using my Heil PR40 going into this PodTrack P4 Next, which is, by the way, I don't think I mentioned this earlier. This thing's only $179. And it has what would have been $1,800 worth of equipment. built into it. Anyway, your audio from Zoom is coming into my computer, and your audio is coming into my PodTrack P4 Next. And there are several different ways that I have the recording of our interview or conversation here. So
You're
first,
getting separate tracks?
I
You're
have
getting my
separate
audio
tracks.
as a separate tracks. Oh, okay.
So there are a couple of things. First, Zoom is recording everything. So Zoom actually has a recording where it has you and I together in video. It has you and I together in audio, all on just one recording. There in Zoom, I have the ability to go in and say, listen, I also want Emily's video separately recorded and my video separately recorded. And I also want her audio separately recorded and my audio separately recorded. All of that can be done and set up inside of Zoom. And there are some settings, if you really do some deep research, you can find out how to tell Zoom to record HD quality video. So you can actually have it record full 1080p video. So you can even increase the quality of the video recording inside of Zoom. Now, I also have Ecamm Live software, which is also recording both of us together and independently, my audio track, your audio track, my video track, your video track, all separately. And all of that's getting recorded locally to my computer's hard drive, while externally, my audio and your audio is being recorded into a single stereo recording, while simultaneously on the Zoom P4 Next, also recording my audio on a separate track and your audio on a separate track. So
Is
I
that
have
for backups?
it's
So
all for redundancy.
I see. Yeah.
If any of
Great.
this
Yeah.
fails, I've got so many options to recover our conversation. And
I
I,
love it.
it certainly solves that problem of what if I forget to hit the record button on my recorder?
I've never forgotten to hit the record button, but I have had when you have a one track with a guest and the host, and someone has a better mic, for example, we just talked about that, and then you have really good quality and low quality, and you just look at that one track and you can just see some of it's high, some of it's low, and that's a bit of a mess.
So I'm curious, when you say that you haven't been able to solve for how do I get high quality audio and do video at the same time, but yet here you are right now with a Audio Technica ATR 2100 microphone plugged into your Zoom system there, and your audio quality is coming through beautifully. And whereas if you didn't have that, I probably would have been polite. I would have been really nice, but secretly I would have been cringing if your audio was instead just coming from that little microphone built into your headphones.
Well, this isn't my normal computer. Like I said, I'm at my
Ah.
husband's computer, and I was like, I am not going to go into this interview with Cliff with some earbud microphone. Like, he's going to call me out on that.
I love it.
So we're going to step it up for this.
So my question for you is, when you are recording your podcast on A Course in Miracles via Zoom, what computer are you dialing in with, and can you not get a second microphone to sit in front of you like you have now?
Yeah,
It's
I
just
mean,
not that
yeah,
important.
we could make it better. That's for sure. But I do a lot of traveling.
Mm-hmm.
I'm in the States and my husband lives in England and we go back and forth all the time. And so for me, it's just been easier to, when I carry my computer, to not have to carry a bunch of recording equipment.
I
That's all.
can totally appreciate that. Not to try to convince you otherwise. I just want to let you know I recently have been searching because, as you have recently heard, I brought back Podcast Answer Man and Podcasting A to Z. So one of the questions that
I want
came,
to talk about that.
okay, I'll answer anything you want to ask about it. But I'll just quickly say that one of my friends reached out and says, okay, Cliff, so I heard you got the PodTrack P4 Next, and this is going to go into your backpack everywhere you go, even if you're not planning to record like podcast interviews or whatever. He goes, I want to know what mics you're going to carry with it. And I said, well, I typically would just throw my ATR 2100s in there, but of course they don't sell those anymore. And he's asking, what are you going to use? And so I just ordered 5 new microphones, all of which are under $100. And I've been testing them out. And you know what? They're all amazing. And the one I chose to go with in my go bag, and I bought 2 of them, a $40 dynamic microphone from a company called Myono. And they have a $60 version that is both XLR and USB. And so you could throw a $60 microphone into your bag and it has a little cable and you could take that anywhere in the world with you.
Well, I might be emailing you and be like, what was that mic again?
Absolutely.
Because this one, this mic from, however many years ago has been the best one that we've had.
Oh,
So
yeah, and you're
I got a
using
pop filter on it and everything. I'm telling you, I learned something
that
back in the day.
that microphone is the Audio Technica ATR 2100 microphone. At the time that you purchased it, I think it was going for like $67. That foam windscreen is probably about another $5 on there. So for less than $80, that microphone sounds almost as good as the Heil PR40 microphone, which is a $400 microphone plus a $75 shock mount plus a $125 boom arm and another $90 pop filter. And yet, if I was not on camera and you couldn't see it, most people would never be able to tell the difference if I was using an ATR 2100 or a Heil PR40.
Mm. Well, you should test that theory and cover the video and just have audio and see if people can guess
So I shouldn't say this out
who's
loud.
using which microphone.
I shouldn't say this out loud, but I am thinking about doing a podcast episode of Podcast Answer Man that has nothing to do with microphones, that has nothing to do with audio quality. And at the very end of the episode, reveal that instead of using my $700 mic setup that I typically use, I used a $40 microphone for this recording.
Well, let me just say something about that because one of the things that I have learned, and I know this won't come as a surprise to you, but what people ultimately care about at the end of the day is the content that you're presenting. And so even though we haven't had the best audio, I feel like it's kind of hilarious that 10 years on, I have worse audio than I did when I started. However, it's good enough.
Mm-hmm.
It's certainly a low bar to entry for someone who wants to start a podcast to say, look, yeah, I've been doing this forever and we do it on Zoom. And I downloaded the Zoom file and I edited it in Camtasia and boom, that's it. We're
Yep.
done. And so the fact that people listen to a podcast that doesn't have the best audio quality because they care about the content, that matters to content creators. So just for anyone who's thinking about starting a podcast, you really don't have to have the $400 mic.
Oh, yeah.
You actually don't even have to have the $80 mic, but it does make the audio quality better. But that's not the most important thing. Your content is the most important thing from my view.
The content definitely is almost here's my perspective. My perspective is the content is almost always the most important thing. However, there are times where the quality of the audio is as important as the quality of the content. Your show, just like in YouTube, is an anomaly. And that is that people care more about the discussion around A Course in Miracles than they do being massaged audibly with a comfortable listening experience. So if your show was just a little bit more broad than a very specific thing that most people are looking for, and they love the content for the content, but if it was just a little bit more of a, I'm listening to this because I'm listening for entertainment and enjoyment about something that I am interested in, but I'm not passionate about, I will tell you that's a case where the audio coming in from the mic built into your earbuds won't carry that audience. That audience will
Mm,
move to
that's a
better
good
sounding
point.
shows.
We do benefit from having a lack of competition out.
Well,
That's
and it's not,
true.
it's not just a lack of competition, although a lack of competition certainly does set you up for even greater success with those who are passionate. But there is, I came across the Course in Miracles, or a Course in Miracles, back in the pandemic days. And so when I was introduced to it, I was introduced to it from the people who were like lifelong devotees to studying
Really?
A Course in the Miracle. And of course, I went and bought the text and I began reading it and studying it and enjoying it, along with other traditions and spiritual texts and stuff like that that I was exploring at the time. And I can see how, like I said, there's so much about the when you choose such a narrowly niche focused podcast. And I mean, you've drilled, you can't go more niche than you have gone. You have gone to the nichest niche you can go, and the audience who are devout to that material will listen to anyone talk about it, even if you and your co-host were recording a conversation over a telephone line.
Mhm. Well, it is true. It's a good point that you made, and it's one that I thought of as well in relation to YouTube taking over Libsyn in terms of where the audience comes from, that YouTube is the number 2 search engine in the world. And so when people are searching for something niche and you offer that, then you obviously show up at the top. So we benefited from that as well.
Absolutely. And also, just one final thing is that even if audio quality needs to be kicked up a notch for you to stand out among all of the competition in a more broad area, nobody ever needs to spend more than $100 on a microphone. And in fact, like I've alluded to a couple times, I found a $40 microphone that will give you a 9 out of 10 audio quality, and nobody would ever know if I didn't tell them, if did an entire podcast episode with it.
Hmm.
So,
Well, you've inspired me to upgrade our equipment, so we'll have to get on that.
all right. So you said you'd like to ask me questions. This, whatever is going to be of most value to you, Emily. This conversation is about you and I getting into a reconnecting after 12 years is what this conversation's about. So how can I be of service to you?
Well, first of all, I just wanted to say a couple of things about um, podcasting A to Z. I I did not know anything about podcasting when I signed up for that. I knew I wasn't even techie. I just knew this is something that I wanted to do, and I didn't have the resources to hire someone to do it. And I'm a good learner and I got a strong work ethic, so I was like, I can do this. And by the end of the class, I really did learn a skill that I use to this day. And I'm so grateful for that. And I didn't ever, I don't think, talk to you personally, but at the same time, I remember the way in which you were always in the community. And as someone who runs a online community, I know how hard that can to be in there answering every single person's question when the person asks the question. And that was another thing that I remembered about you too, is you were very quick in your responses and thorough in your responses. And there was one time where I think I was in the process of recording something that had messed up, and I just typed a question and you were able to answer it while I was recording. And so that's how quick it was. And so I just really appreciated that. And part of the reason why I'm here today is because I just I never forgot that class. You know, I'm somebody who has taken a lot of online classes, and not all of them do you complete, right? We live in a world where online classes are a commodity and you buy them, and sometimes you finish them, and most of the time you don't. I finished that class, and our group as a cohort went through it together. There were some friendships that developed from it, and I know that some of them are still um, keeping up with their podcasts as well. So anyway, I just wanted to say that in a world where you never know quite who you can trust in this space, it was really heartwarming to see the way in which I could tell that you genuinely cared about the success of everyone who was part of the program. And I just wanted to say that publicly because I appreciate all that I learned from you and how much you genuinely care about the people that you're helping.
Thank you so much. I really value and appreciate those words of encouragement and affirmation for the level of detail that I have and also for the level of depth that I go with the people that I serve. I tell people, I said, if you join Podcasting A to Z, you get unlimited access to me for 4 weeks as your personal coach, walking you through every single step in the process. And I limit the number of students who can go through an A to Z course to about 20 students because I stand by 40 hours a week to record, to answer those questions as they're coming in. And it got easier,
Mm-hmm.
by the way, over the years. I'll give you a little behind the scenes information. So, when you've been doing podcast coaching and consulting for as long as I have, I've heard about 80% of any question any new person coming into podcasting could ever ask me. I've already heard heard 80% of all the questions you could ever think to ask, including all of the obstacles, the struggles, the technical issues, the problems, the buzzing sounds in your thing, everything. All of it. And not only have I heard those 80% of those questions over and over again, I've answered them hundreds of times. And eventually I got smart enough to start keeping a knowledge base, a document where every question that's asked, and if I spend more than 10, 15 minutes, and sometimes I take up to about 2 to 3 hours to fully provide an incredibly in-depth answer. And so the first time that question comes in that where I haven't documented it in the past, I will spend those 2 to 3 hours answering that question. And that might be like 17 paragraphs to your 3 sentences question. But once I've done it and I've saved it, when the next student asks that in the next session, when they click on, they hit submit they submit their question, and while they're recording their show, you come back and I've already answered your thing. And if it's got like a 15 to 17 paragraph response that took me 2 hours to answer, well, I did that work 3.5 years ago. And all I did was
Mm-hmm.
take your question. I went and found that, copied that answer I created a long time ago, and hit paste, but then only changed a few lines to make sure that it's perfectly worded specifically to how you asked your question. So that's a little behind the scenes thing there. And so it used to take me about 80 hours a week to serve 20 students through a podcasting A to Z course. And before I stopped doing A to Z back in 2017, of course, I've brought it back here in 2026, but I was getting to the place where I could serve 20 to 30 students with no more than 20 hours a week and still provide the same level of experience that you experienced.
Nice. I remember you also kept the cohort site up for it was years afterwards. I had it bookmarked at the top of my computer. I could go in and do a search in the class and come up with answers from, years ago because I had access to all of that material still. So that was really helpful as well. I'm curious as to why you decided to stop doing the A to Z course and what made you want to come back. I remember you transitioned into wanting to help with mindset, and then I think maybe that's where I lost contact with what you were doing.
hmm Well, interestingly enough, you'll recall earlier in this conversation, you said one of the things that drew you to podcasting is that you were thinking about going down the entrepreneurial path of author, coach, speaker, that route, right? And what I discovered is that most of the people who invested in Podcasting A to Z, which, as you remember, was a like $2,000 investment just to go through the course, and people who were investing at that level, a majority of them were looking to use a podcast to help them grow a business. And what I also recognize is that most of them had no business model. Their entire idea is that if I just launch a podcast, I create it and they will come and the money will start rolling in. And I'm like, no, that's not how this works. But my whole situation is that I was marketing, I'm going to help you by the end of these 4 weeks launch a podcast. But what I've discovered is that for some people, launching a podcast, if your primary purpose is to become a thought leader and you want to build an audience and who will buy your products and services so you can create additional revenue so you could leave a day job, for example, I don't think launching your podcast by the end of this course is really what you need right now. What you need is we need to ask you a couple of questions. What kind of business do you want to create? What products and services will you offer? Who's your exact ideal customer? Who's somebody? Here's the 5 key ingredients of a ideal client that most people had no answers for. You've got to find somebody who has money, who has a problem that they're aware that they have, they're willing to pay to have that problem solved, and you have to be not only able to answer that question, but you want to be able to get to the place where you love and enjoy answering that question for the long term. And if you don't have that ideal client in mind, it doesn't make sense for you to go create a podcast so you can grow an audience when you don't know what audience you're trying to attract. And so what I found through helping so many people, and I helped through Podcasting A to Z, nearly 700 students had gone through it during those early years. And then tens of thousands of people went through my online tutorials. And what I recognize is that a majority of people were failing miserably to earn any income. They were growing audiences, but they were going 3, 5, 7 years, and they're not even making enough money to pay their hosting bill, which is only $25 a month. I mean, it was ridiculous. And so what happened is I'm like, man, I really wish I could help people with what it is they're most wanting to do. But my day all week, every day, was answering people's technical questions related to podcasting. And while I did have that knowledge base that I was telling you about, it was a very clunky system. It was all being done in something that would be the equivalent of like an Evernote or something like that. It was not the best technology. And so for me, what I recognize is I want to be able to do more to serve people with what they really want, which is let me help them with business strategy and business mindset. So many people who, even if they figure out the business model, they get in, they become full-time self-employed, they're doing coaching now, and they think they're going to be able to replace their day job income with $50 an hour coaching. And I'm like, no, you're not going to be able to replace your day job income. You will not be able to support your family of 5 on $50 an hour coaching because you're never going to book yourself 40 hours a week of coaching. You've actually got to be able to earn all of the money you need within about 15 hours a week of coaching so that you can do the other 20 to 30 hours a week for all of the running the business. And so you need to actually be charging about $150 to $200 an hour for your coaching minimum. And we need to get you to the place where you're doing something so valuable, people will pay you $500, $1,000, or even $1,500 for a single hour of one-on-one with you. That's where we need to get you. And so there was mindset hurdles that people had with all of that. And I had the gift and the talent and the ability to do that. And people were willing to invest far more in a coaching relationship with me to get that help than they were to answer their technical questions. And so eventually I'm like, okay, you know what? Let me just go over and do business strategy and mindset instead of this technical stuff. And I shut down all of the technical stuff related to Podcast Answer Man and Podcasting A to Z.
I remember.
Just so I could do that work. It was a massive decision. And that's what I did. And for 8 years, that's been my focus. Now, the thing is that I have honed my skills as a business strategy and mindset coach. And I have tons of free time. And as a result of that, I'm like, it occurred to me, and it happened by accident. I went and saw this on Facebook. And for the first time in 8 years, Emily, I got on a live stream and I started talking about a piece of podcasting equipment.
You geeked out about a piece of equipment again,
I
and the flame came back.
That is exactly what happened. And not only did the flame come back, but so did all of the technical questions.
Yeah.
And here's what turned it on. So what happened was one of the questions came from a guy named Paul Spain. He happens to be in New Zealand. He also happens to be a gentleman that many years ago, I think it was 2015, he invited me to come out to New Zealand for 10 days, all expenses paid. He paid me to do a 45.
What's his email?
He paid me to speak for 45 minutes to do an opening keynote address for the Asia Pacific Podcast Conference. Not only did he pay all of my expenses, he gave me his personal car to drive during those 10 days. And he also had a rental house that he rents out that he made sure was vacant so that I could stay in a house that he provided for me for those 10 days. Now, this guy, when he saw my video, he asked a quick little question. Hey, Cliff, some of us have had the original PodTrack P4 from Zoom for the last several years and have enjoyed it. What's different with this new PodTrack P4 Next? And do you think with what's been upgraded, is it worth us considering making the purchase to the new equipment? Now, that's a very quick question to ask. And in 2017, for me to answer that question, I would have, first of all, I've never owned a Zoom P4, the original version. So what I would have to do to answer that question in 2017, I'd have to go search online for the PDF of the owner's manual. I'd have to download it. I'd have to open it up, and I'd have to go through and read every single feature, every every spec for every item, every function, every knob. I have to know everything. And then I have to actually pull the manual for this one and research what's different between the two. And then I have to make some sort of determination. What is my judgment on whether or not each of these features leads towards a check mark in the upgrade department? That in 2017 would have taken me, if I didn't have the attention deficit that I do have, maybe as little as 2 hours, but I kind of get distracted. And so that answer would have taken me 8 hours. Now, I would have answered it once, it would have been 8 hours, and I would have been able to use that over and over again. But that is an example of how long it would have taken to answer one question as it being the first time it's been asked. And here I am. I'm not the podcast answer man anymore. And this is in November 2025, so last year. And I'm asking myself, did I really open myself up to this question? And if it was anyone else other than Paul Spain, who had invested so much and had done so much so generously for me, I might not have been as compelled to sit down and get ready to undertake the answering of that question. Well, here's what I did. I went into ChatGPT and I said, hey, I have this device. Here's the transcript of everything I geeked out about it in 2 different videos. Take a look at everything there. Here's the owner's manual in PDF format of the PodTrack P4 Next. Go online and research and find the manual for the original P4. And here's the question Paul Spain asked, and give me a detailed response. It did that in 2.5 minutes. And it took me 20 minutes to go through and click all the links to the resources so that I could verify and confirm that it didn't hallucinate any of the, because ChatGPT makes up a lot of stuff. And so I had to go through and confirm, and I did. And then I went through and modified my opinion on each feature because it kind of made up some stuff. And I'm like, no, that's a little bit overblown. That's a little hypey. This one's the big deal here. This one's this. And what would have taken me 8 hours before took me 25 minutes. I did all of that in my Notion database, which is a different tool that I use today, which is much better than Evernote ever was. And I took his question, took all of my answer that took me 25 minutes to put together, and then I copied it and I pasted the longest comment you could possibly imagine in Facebook to that question. And it was done. And I'm like, that was amazing. And then Paul was the first of 7 people within 3 days to ask the same exact question.
Mm.
And then
Mhm.
all I did is I went into Notion, copy, paste, copy, paste, copy, paste. And I was talking about this with my green room mastermind. And I said, you guys, somebody mentioned, Cliff, what is it? Why are you bringing back Podcast Answer Man? Why are you talking about podcast gear again? And I told them everything I just told you. And they said, Cliff, we haven't seen you this excited in a long time. So, you sure something's not up? I said, well, I'm really excited. And I said, you know what? Something just occurs to me. And it was the first time I'm actually telling this story out loud. I said, I just realized something. In 2017, if I would have had Notion and ChatGPT, I don't think I would have ever had to shut down Podcast Answer Man. And then the question came from my mastermind group. So does that mean it's coming back? And that launched a different thread in a conversation that I had not anticipated. And by the end of that hot seat in the Green Room Mastermind, I said, it feels like the answer to that question is yes, I need to go have a conversation with Stephanie first. So I went and had a conversation with Stephanie, told her everything. And she's like, that makes a lot of sense. And so the very next day, I journaled about it, sat down in prayer, and the answer was, heck yeah, there's no question. And so why is it back? Well, first of all, December 16th, I celebrated my 20th anniversary in podcasting. And if there's ever a time to make a big, huge, like, announcement and splash in the world, hey guys, I'm celebrating my 20th anniversary in podcasting. And to celebrate, I'm bringing back Podcast Answer Man and my Podcasting A to Z course, because now I just know that there's so many people who are looking to start online businesses, which what I really love doing, Emily, is helping people with business strategy and mindset. But
Are you
man,
going to do both
I'm
moving forward?
definitely going to do both. And that's the difference
Nice.
today compared to then. Before, I had a Podcasting A to Z 4-week group training program. And if you already launched your podcast, that was pretty much all I had to offer you. Well, today, once you finish Podcasting A to Z, you could move into one-on-one business strategy coaching with me, business mindset coaching. You could join my paid mastermind group for entrepreneurs for a year. You could come to my live events and workshops related to the entrepreneurial journey. There's so many things that I have to offer that I created over the last 8 years that I didn't have in 2017.
That's really exciting. Congratulations on all of the growth that you've had in your business and your life and how you have put it all together to serve others. I think everything happens in its own right timing, and you needed those 8 years to learn what you've learned to bring it back. But I am excited that you have a little affection for Podcast Answer Man, and so to see that you were bringing it back was very exciting. And I can appreciate the concern you might have about, okay, well, it's been 8 years. People who are doing podcasts now or want to do podcasts now didn't know you then. And so you're almost, or maybe they didn't. And so you're almost starting from scratch a little bit with Podcast Answer Man. So I think it's a good strategy to be, not that you're being strategic about this, but it's a good idea to talk to people who have benefited from the work that you've been doing in over those 20 years.
Yeah.
I just feel like I benefited. There was something kind of magical about that time between 2000 and I would say 2015, because the online entrepreneurial space was really ramping up then. And so there wasn't a lot of competition. And so there was these kind of luminaries. There was like, Marie Forleo and Amy Porterfield, and you were up there with your niche of podcasts, and Michael Hyatt. And, there were just all these names that as a internet entrepreneur, you just kind of knew who to look to. Now it's just so saturated, you don't know where to look. But I really benefited from that because I was in Marie's B school, and I was also in Amy Porterfield's program. And you're not going to go through an Amy Porterfield program without knowing that if you have a podcast, you better have an email list. And if you have an email list, you better have a continual free offering. And your continual free offering leads to your paid offering, and that leads to your premium offering, right? So I benefited from all of the knowledge that was out there from this class of internet entrepreneurs. And so I'm just grateful. And it's amazing to see how many of you are still doing this work, right? Like I still take Amy's classes, and I still see Michael Hyatt out there doing his thing. And so it's just nice to see how long of a career these folks have had in serving people who now have their own careers serving others. It's cool.
It is it has definitely been a fun journey to witness the lives of all of those people that you've mentioned. And I just want to say that it certainly there was less competition in our mind, the way that we perceive it today. And certainly people like you and I who have been around since those early days, we've seen how much it grows, how much it's grown. If there's anything that I could share with you to maybe help you see this from a different perspective, and certainly how other people will perceive this, there are a number of people, Emily, who have not yet been introduced to anything in the online entrepreneurial space. And it could be, I mean, these are people who have, they've lived their life as employees, they've gone down this route and all these other things. And there are still people who are discovering podcasts for the first time today, still. And it could be you. And so there may be 50 or 150 or 250 other people who are podcasting exactly about the same topic that you are podcasting about. But the number of people who are actually listening to and discovering podcasts today is so exponentially higher today than it was back then, that really the percentage of opportunity for somebody who's a new content creator, relatively speaking, isn't much less. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense. I will say though that one of the more difficult things when you're just getting started is being able to maintain the consistency that you need in order to grow a listenership.
Yes.
And so that is such a big hump for someone who maybe is just learning about podcasting and wanting to get into it. Your ability to get content out every week or every couple of weeks is a big deal. And those who are still around are those who are still doing the content.
That is exactly it. You'll find that the people are still who are still around, they're producing, most of them, one episode a week, no more, no less, and they never miss a week. And they can say that for the last 12, 14 years. Those are the people who are still crushing it today. And
Hmm.
that is a lot of work. It is a lot of time, a lot of effort, it's a lot of energy. That consistency does not happen by accident. And the thing is, though, is you have to really ask yourself, do I truly want to be an entrepreneur? Do I truly want to build an audience? Do I truly do I want a community of people out there who are absolute loyal fans of the work that I do? And if I would like to have loyal fans, the only thing I can say is, how do I get that if I'm not first loyal to them by delivering the content that they're a fan of on a consistent, loyal basis?
Yeah, and that's it. You're not going to be driven to create the content unless you really care
Yeah,
about the content that you're creating and the people that you're serving. And so that's one of the things that again, that's why I'm kind of sitting in this chair right now, happy to be doing this interview, is because I just really sensed how much you cared about the people that you're serving. And at the end of the day, you were saying earlier about a business, getting a business model together, and people were taking the course and focused on the podcast and thinking if you just get the podcast done, then the people will come. And the podcast shouldn't be the biggest part of your week, right? The
Right.
podcast is a tool that you're using to do these other things. And so if you're spending a lot of time on your podcast, then that's probably a red flag. And so the you have to get into a system where your podcast is just, the thing that you do. We record every first and third Thursday from 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. And the reason why we're on such a consistent schedule is because we have a live audience that shows up for the live recording. And my husband and I realized unless we have an audience, we don't actually record anything. We're always like, oh, we need to do that, but we've got this other meeting, and so we scheduled it live so that we would actually get it done. And that's how we've maintained our consistency over the 7 years that we've done our podcast.
That is a great tip. I will tell you that I love scheduling things live to create things that I would otherwise procrastinate and push to the next day, push to the next day, push to the next day. But boy, if I schedule it and I invite people to come and join me live and I tell them I'm going to be there, there is no chance on earth I'm going to miss that opportunity to show up and deliver.
Same. And you also, when you have something live, not only does it allow you to get into a rhythm and you keep your commitment, but you also are able to see in real time the response to what you're saying. And oftentimes people will type in the chat questions, and I'm, from a listener standpoint, the someone who's just listening to the podcast doesn't know that these questions are coming in, because I'm not like, oh, we got a question from so and so. I'm just asking the question, so they're helping me do my job better. And so there's all kinds of reasons to keep, all kinds of ways rather, to keep consistent with your podcast. But that's really been so key for us. It took years for us to get to the place where people say, I found you because of your podcast. It used to be all kinds of other little things, and now, as I said, a good large portion of the people who come in are coming in through that one channel.
Yeah. Emily, is there anything else that you want to share that we didn't discuss about your own journey, your own experience in podcasting, what you've got going on? Anything else you want to promote? Anything?
I can't imagine. A Course in Miracles, as you've pointed out, is such a niche thing. I can't imagine you have too many listeners who are interested in what we do on that level. But if you are interested in A Course in Miracles, which is a spiritual path where you heal your mind through forgiveness and then extend that healing to others through extensions of love, we're at circleofa.org, and our podcast is called Exploring A Course in Miracles, and that's on YouTube and wherever you listen to your podcasts.
Let me see if I heard that correct. Circleofa.org, is that correct? And
Yep.
Circle of A stands for Circle of Atonement. Is that correct?
It stands for Circle of Atonement. Atonement's a word that people have a lot of issues with, I've learned over the years. And atonement just means anything that you thought separated you from God or anybody else isn't real.
Okay.
That's all atonement is.
So it's circleofa.org. I'll put that in the show notes. Also, the podcast is Exploring A Course in Miracles, available in all your favorite podcast directories and now on YouTube.
That's right.
Emily, is there anything else you want to share?
No, I think that's it. I just really appreciate the opportunity to reconnect with you, Cliff. And even though we haven't had contact in all of these years, you haven't left my mind, as every time I'm in Camtasia editing this podcast, I'm so grateful for the skills that I learned back in the day to be able to do this. And so just thank you for all the work that you've been doing for all these many years. And I know as you roll out podcast Answer Man again, that so many others will benefit from it, just as I have.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you, Emily. And I want to invite you to feel free to reach out to me anytime that I can be of support and encouragement to you in any area of life. I just would love to continue the conversation, and I'm thrilled that it took me posting about the return of Podcast Answer Man and Podcasting A to Z for you to say, I'll reach out to Cliff. And so I'm glad
Yeah.
that you did. And I make it a point to try to reach out to people from time to time. And but yeah, I'm honored that we are reconnected, and I look forward to continuing the conversation. Thank you so much, Emily.
Thanks, Chris. My pleasure. My pleasure. Thank you.
Guys, thank you so much for tuning into this live stream. If you are interested in launching a podcast, my next session of Podcasting A to Z does start on January 26th. You can find out more details at podcastinga2z.com. Of course, check out Exploring A Course in Miracles in your favorite podcast directory, and also check out the website circleofa.org. Until next time, I encourage you to take everything you do to the next level.
Podcast Answer Man.